General Kuperwasser, thank you so much, sir, for talking to Voice of America Press Service. Israel Prime Minister says Israel is fighting a seventh front war. What is your view on this front?
Yes, as the Prime Minister said, it's really a multi-front war that we are involved in. But basically, it's a war between us and two groups. One is Hamas. There's a war between us and Hamas. It's a very intensive war. It's lasted already for almost 10 months. And the situation changes on the ground all the time because of the ongoing war. And there's a war between us and Iran. The war between us and Hamas can also be seen as part of it, but it also stands by itself. And the war between us and Iran takes place in various battlefields. We have the war with Hezbollah, we have the war with the Houthis, we have the war with the Shiite militias in Iraq, we have the war with militias in Syria, and we have direct war with Iran. And all of that is happening simultaneously. The Iranians, of course, enjoy very much being able to conduct this war from behind and using the proxies that they have spent a lot of resources on building throughout the years. And they originally thought that they will defend Iran against some threat from Israel. But basically what happened on October 7th changed the situation entirely and led them to decide to use these assets in a different context. And it's a very demanding war. Of course, one other battlefield that is less lethal but not less important is the international arena, where legitimacy issues and international support is being at stake. And it's not less important necessarily than the other battlefields where missiles and rockets are being launched. So that's the picture. Now, what's going on in those arenas?
I wanted to ask, could you give an update on each of these fronts?
In the arena between us and Hamas, I think we are facing three competing strategies that are presented in front of the government of Israel. One says, we have done enough, we inflicted enough damage on Hamas, and the most important issue for us should be releasing the hostages. So let's cut a deal with Hamas, release the hostages. Doesn't matter what the price is, as long as we release all the hostages. And they suffered enough. The Palestinian Hamas organization and the people of Gaza have suffered enough. And if we stop now, we shall be also able to establish better, or at least there's a potential for better relations with the Arab world, especially Saudi Arabia. And of course, the Americans are going to stand behind us more firmly. And that's a wonderful strategy for those who support it. The point is that if we do that, we leave Hamas as the governing power in Gaza, the ruling power in Gaza. And that's against one of the goals of the war, which is to defeat Hamas not only militarily, but also from the point of view of who governs Gaza. We don't want Hamas to govern Gaza in the day after. Not only that, they will be able to regroup and rearm themselves to the point that they will be able to conduct another 7th of October like operation. So it has its good angles and it has its bad angles, and one has to decide whether you want it or not. This attitude is especially problematic because it doesn't provide you with the ability to implement the goals of the war. We don't make the goals of the war achievable.
Could you provide more details on other possible options?
The other option, the other strategy that we have is let's stop for a while, not stop entirely like the first option suggests. Let's stop for a while. We have inflicted heavy damage on Hamas, and we should stop for according to an understanding that if we don't get all the hostages, we shall be able to resume our activities. If war is not going to be ended with release of the hostages, we shall conduct raids from outside Gaza into Gaza against the efforts of Hamas to regain their capabilities. And this will guarantee us that there's not going to be a 7th of October again. Although, as any option, this is also a problematic option. It's less securing Hamas as the governing power in Gaza, but it says that Hamas is going to be able to govern Gaza, if not secured, but it's going to be the ruler of Gaza. And nobody guarantees us that we should be really able to stop Hamas from rearming themselves. So, and anyhow, Hamas will be able to say, even of course, it will be able to say that if we choose the first option, but even if we choose the second option, Hamas will be able to say that they have succeeded in withstanding the Israeli attack, Israeli counterattack after 7th of October. And because of that, in spite of the fact that they suffered a lot, it was a very courageous and successful operation. And it proved that Hamas is a strong body, and they will dominate, try to take that as a leverage in order to dominate the Palestinian arena. And that's option 2.
If you like to have some evaluation and selection of these options that you mentioned, how would you address the pros and cons of each?
While option 1 is presented mainly by the families of some of the hostages, who really want to see first and foremost the release of the hostages, and some people in the Israeli left, and some commentators in some places, a lot of commentators. Option 2 is presented mainly by and supported mainly by the Israeli defense system, Israeli security system. Most of the army leadership, the internal security leadership, others support this option. And there's the third option, which says that no, we have to stick to our goals. And by the way, it's interesting. The second option doesn't say that we are not committed to the goals of the war, but says we have our own way to rephrase the goals of the war. Whereas the goals of the war say defeat Hamas and destroy its ability to govern Gaza, and release the hostages and make sure that Gaza will not be able to be used as a launching pad for another 7th of October. They say we shall not defeat Hamas, we shall dismantle Hamas. And dismantling Hamas means mainly dismantling the military formations of Hamas. Yes, the 24 brigades, the 24 battalions that Hamas has. Let's dismantle them, and this will be enough. We don't have to defeat Hamas altogether. We just have to dismantle the military capabilities of Hamas. One of the arguments used in order to support this is that Hamas is an idea. You can't defeat an idea. So let's be satisfied with dismantling the battalions of the idea, but we don't need to dismantle to defeat the idea. That is the logic of the second option.
You mentioned 3 options. Could you address the third one as well?
The third option says, no, we should stick to the original goals of the war. We should defeat Hamas. We should defeat it militarily and governing-wise. We should release all the hostages by putting more power, more pressure on Hamas to the point where they will understand that the only way for them to survive is by releasing the hostages. And we should make sure that Gaza cannot serve as a terror launching pad in the future. This would mean that we should replace Hamas and remove Hamas from power and replace it with somebody else, with something else. How exactly you do that is a big question. Is it feasible? Big question. But we believe, those who support this third option, we believe that this is doable. It's not easy. And one of the things that are necessary for that purpose is to really defeat Hamas and throw them out of Gaza, so the leadership out of Gaza, and replace it maybe in the first duration for a couple of months or maybe a year or two, even two, replace it with Israeli military governance, civil administration, whatever, and use that time when we can prove to the people of Gaza that Hamas is out and it's not coming back ever, that they can feel safe enough in order to assume responsibility for their own lives by themselves. And we hope that this will enable some people from technocrats of Gaza, those people who are interested in a better life, not in destroying the Jews, killing them all, we should be able to empower them to the point where they will be ready to assume responsibility for their own fate. We should need for that purpose a lot of assistance from the United States, from the free world, from Arab states that are more moderate, that have already decided to make peace with Israel, especially the Emirates, but maybe also Egypt, maybe also Jordan, maybe also Bahrain, maybe Morocco, maybe in the future, in the coming future, Saudi Arabia. All of these will have to help us in making this a new reality. The good thing about this option that speaks about victory and not about dismantling Hamas, but about being victorious in the war against Hamas, the good thing is it guarantees us that we shall gain the ability to achieve all the three goals of the war vis-a-vis Gaza. The bad news is that it's not totally clear whether it is feasible. And, it's going to take a long time to make it happen. It goes along with a lot of risks and requires a lot of resources to be invested in Gaza by Israel. And in the end of the day, Israelis don't want to rule Gaza. They are afraid that if they enter this option, it will lead them to a situation where they actually rule Gaza, and nobody is going to volunteer to take it away from us. Not the Gazans, not the international community, not the Arabs. Nobody will take it away from us. We should be stuck with us, with Gaza. So it's all options are having their advantages and disadvantages. No option is a perfect one.
Currently and at the moment, how is the picking process among all these three options that you mentioned?
As long as we keep fighting, we defer the need to make a decision. We can still choose from all three. And people are very upset with the fact that we don't make a decision. But on the surface, the government has decided to go for option three. Yes, that's Netanyahu. Netanyahu speaks very often about option three, about how much he's committed to option three. But everybody knows that that's what he says now. Maybe tomorrow he's going to say something different. The security system puts a lot of pressure on him to take option one and option two. Sorry. Many people in Israel, especially some families of the hostages, put pressure on him to take option one. The Americans are trying to convince him to take something that is a mixture between option two and option one, something in the middle between a certain option one version of option two. This is what the Americans want him to do. And as he says again and again, including yesterday night, he's convinced that he has to stick to option three, and he stands like a colossus against the pressures, including those coming from the United States, to move towards option two or option one, and he's committed to option three. So if you look at what's happening now on the ground from his lens, he's actually implementing option three, okay? What we are doing is we are implementing option three while keeping open the option of moving to option two. That's what we're doing. The ongoing operations of eliminating the leadership of Hamas is part of option three. It's part of trying to defeat Hamas and kick them out of Gaza. The next in line is, of course, Yahya Sinwar himself. After we did Mohammed Def and Marwan Issa and, of course, Ismail Haniya, whether we did it or not, doesn't matter, he's not with us. And there's a lot of casualties in the higher ranking echelon of Hamas. And at the same time, we did enter Rafah. We keep moving in Khan Yunis occasionally in northern Gaza. We operate on the ground. We cause Hamas a very big damage. many Hamas activists were killed, and many others were captured, and many others were wounded. And the situation is very problematic from this point. But at the same time, we keep option 2 available to us, because as long as we do option 3 without taking responsibility for the population itself, just move them from one place to another, from one safe area to another safe area, trying very much to avoid hitting them, but not taking responsibility directly for them. Don't get involved in supplying them with the materials they need in order for living, and so humanitarian aid is being distributed by international community organizations supervised by Hamas, not by Israel. As long as this is the case, we keep option B, option 2 as possible. And that's where we stand. I sincerely hope that we shall move all the way to implementing option 3. I think this is the right option. Even though it has all kinds of problems, we have to see how we deal with the problems. But it's not clear what's going to happen. So far, we are at option 3.
General, it's a very complicated and sophisticated subject, but let's get to it. I talked with one of the members of the delegation of the Prime Minister when he was in last visit in Washington, D.C. He said Israel forces so far have found about 400 kilometers of tunnels, and this is not the end of it. Is this true? And if so, how the second option that you mentioned could be under consideration?
That's why I'm against option 2. But people say, well, we shall never know if we really destroyed all the tunnels. So some tunnels will probably be left behind if we leave Gaza. I think we shouldn't leave Gaza. In option 3, the military responsibility for Gaza is left in the hands of the Israeli military. And it will be present in not all places, but will be able to be present wherever it wants. Because it will maintain the overall responsibility for military threats, dealing with military threats. And this means, amongst other things, that we are going to stay along the Philadelphia corridor and along the Netzarim corridor in the middle of Gaza. That's option 3. Option 2 says, let's give up on Netzarim, let's give up on Philadelphia corridor, the border between Israel and between Gaza and Egypt. And we shall know how to handle the problems if there are going to be any problems. I don't believe in that. And I fully understand what you're saying. We need more time to make option 3 feasible. We need more time. Even if we are left with 200 kilometers of tunnels, we still have to make progress on that. As long as we are staying there, eventually we discover more and more shafts of the tunnels. And, we destroy more and more of that infrastructure. We have been in Khan Yunis for several months. We've been to Rafah now for 4 months, and we cannot say that we have finished the job yet. So it tells you, of course, that in order to clear the area, we should need to hold it for a long time. I leave the build part of the American 3 elements, clear, hold, build, or hold, clear, build. Well, I leave it for it's going to take months. It's going to take months before we can even start building, finish clearing. And we shall never know if we really manage to clear everything. But being underground gives you a lot of information. We collect information that was not collectible beforehand. We neglected a lot of information gathering options in the Gaza Strip in the years preceding the 7th of October attack. And now we are compensating ourselves with collecting more and more information that is necessary in order to be able to clear the underground and the overground facilities. Look, many of the operations we take recently are overground, still overground. Wherever we finished dealing with or did a lot of damage to the tunnels, they operate over the ground. And they found refuge in hospitals, in UNRWA facilities, in schools. These have turned into Hamas's headquarters. So we still have to deal not only with the underground, but also with the overground facilities. And this is going to take time. Look, Hamas had, before the war, something like between 30 to 40,000 people we have killed, let's say, half of them, captured half of them, and captured some of them and wounded some of them. Still, there are something like close to 10,000 people out there. 7,000, 10,000, nobody knows the exact number. It's not a minor number that they're still operating, still causing us damage from time to time. We still have casualties. I must say that the number of casualties we had until now is amazingly small compared with what we were preparing ourselves to pay. The cost we paid was much less than what we envisaged. But still, it's very painful, and we still lose people here and there. We are far from ending the war. We're still fighting. And this guy that told you that we have discovered 400 kilometers is more or less correct, and the overall number for the tunnels is probably closer to 600. So we still have a third of the war in front of us. And especially as some of these tunnels that we are working on the major tunnels. Some of them are small tunnels in the suburbs, but some of them are major tunnels that cross Gaza Strip from south to north, and some of them are connected with the underground tunnel system that was working underneath the Philadelphia corridor. We have to close that. So we are still way before we can say that we have finished the job.
General, here where I am, I'm in Washington, D.C., we hear many news and coverage from media, hostage families, from commentators, which is closely linked to the second option that you mentioned. I'm a continent away. I have no deep knowledge of what's happening over there. But to what extent the IDF and Israeli Defense Forces, intelligence community in Israel, I'm sure they know it much better, to what extent they support the option 2 in Israel. Or this is an option that is only favored outside Israel.
Well, it's basically coming out from the outside, but it has support inside Israel. Because the reason is that the people promoting the option 2 say that this is going to bring us the hostages, the chances that it's going to bring the hostages are greater than if you follow option 3. Those who follow option 3 say that option 3 has better chances to bring back the hostages sooner, and all of them, because only the military pressure works. The option 2 says, yes, military pressure works. That's why how we got to where we are. But if we keep on pushing, the time is of the essence, and who knows if the hostages will survive. And that's why we have to operate now. And between the targets that the goals that we have to put the goal of releasing the hostages number 1, because it's the most urgent one, not because it's more important than defeating Hamas, but because it's more urgent. And anyhow, defeating Hamas is a bad idea because it would mean eventually that we should own Gaza. And nobody wants to own Gaza. So if you don't want to own Gaza, don't go for option 3. It would mean that you own Gaza. That's the logic of option 2, and they claim that yes, it comes with a price. True, Hamas will stay in power, and we should have to intervene whenever we see some threats evolving from the Gaza Strip. But we are strong enough, we are capable enough, and we should be able to do it. I'll tell you a story, okay, why I don't believe it. When I was head of the research division in the military intelligence, we left Gaza, this famous disengagement. And when we left Gaza, we said, if there was going to be one rocket launched from Gaza to Israel, we shall know what to do. We shall respond very dramatically and painfully, and we shall know what to do. And 5 months or 6 months after we left Gaza, I don't remember exactly, 5 to 6 months, Hamas held a very big rally in mid-Gaza, and they brought a live rocket into the rally in order to show that the rockets forced Israel to disengage. And the rocket was mishandled somehow, and it exploded inside the rally. And there were several casualties for Hamas. So instead of saying, sorry, we didn't mean it, it was a technical problem and whatever, it shouldn't have happened, but we were very sorry, they said, Israel did it. Israel was responsible for the explosion of the rocket. We did nothing. But that's what they said. In response, they launched 50 rockets towards Israel in one night. 50 rockets towards Israel. This was November, if I remember correctly, November 2006. And 2005, November 2005. And we in Israel, we held a meeting to say, what are we going to do about it? About 50 rockets launched. Didn't we say that one rocket will be responded with a heavy and harsh retaliation? And I said, yes, let's go and respond heavily and take a piece of northern Gaza back. And this will serve as a message to these guys that we should not tolerate this kind of attitude. The answer I got from the military leadership was, we didn't leave Gaza in order to re-enter it. So I am sure that this is going to be the response we should get once we leave Gaza now. If we leave Gaza, the military leadership will always say, we didn't leave Gaza in order to re-enter it, so let's not do anything. That's how we ended up with this situation. Well, this episode was the episode that led us to the 7th of October many, many years later. And that's why we should not tell ourselves all kinds of stories that are not going to materialize in reality.
One thing about the third option I wanted to talk to you about. All we have in our recent memories on going somewhere and establish a new government or organizing body is Afghanistan and Iraq. We have no idea what's happening in Afghanistan. It is left alone. And Iraq still struggles for control. How feasible would you think it is to establish a governing body in Gaza, which could be true representative of the people?
Well, as I said, this is the main weakness of option 3. It's the feasibility of it. The Americans keep telling us, don't repeat our mistakes, learn from our mistakes in Iraq and learn from our mistakes in Afghanistan, don't repeat them. Yes, they look at a certain set of mistakes that they did. We look at many other mistakes, the fact that they decided to leave. Maybe they decided to leave too early. It's the way they left. It's not necessarily the best way to leave. We have to learn those lessons too. There are many lessons to learn from Iraq and Afghanistan. But there's also one big difference. Gaza is our backyard. Iraq and Afghanistan are not the United States' backyard. And it's not going miles and miles away, thousands of miles away, Gaza. That was our initial mistake. We left Gaza in the disengagement without realizing that now we leave Hamas meters away from our villages and communities along the border. They took advantage of that on October 7th. We believe that, okay, they are there, but they are not going to cross because, first of all, this is 48 territories. They're not going to cross into 48 territories. These are not the occupied territories of 67. These are areas of proper Israel. They could never do that. And beyond that, we have built a fence and we have built a system that supports the fence and all that. So we should be able to deal with it. And all the signs that were telling us, look, they don't care if it is 48 or 67. They don't want Israel to exist in the first place. And they're ready to carry out this kind of operations in 48 territories just as well as in 67 territories, as they did in Gaza Strip before. We insisted on ignoring the signs. It's unbelievable. We had the plan that they used to have. We have the efforts that they exerted in building the tunnels underneath the ground into Israel proper beforehand, since 2007, and we had the information about the adjustments they made to the plan after they lost the ability to enter Israel through the tunnels back in 2020, and they came up with a different option. And we had the plan. We call it in Israel the Jericho Wall. We had the plan, every single. We saw the practices, and we saw the drills, we saw the training. We saw everything. Everything was happening in front of our eyes. They didn't try very hard to conceal it. And we didn't believe that this is going to happen. So we're in a different situation. We have 2 million people brainwashed to kill us, happy to do that. We saw this terrible massacre of October 7th that tells you how, with what glee they did what they did, and the terrible things that they did. And these 2 million people live just next to us, meters away. This is not Afghanistan, this is not Iraq. So if we cannot if we cannot find people who want to live in peace with us, we should have to control this land ourselves, because otherwise we should allow them to repeat the 7th of October. There's no reason to believe that if they stay with the same kind of brainwash that they used to be exposed to before 7th of October, they are not going to try again. They will try again. So we should start de-radicalization effort at some point. It's going to take decades before the de-radicalization is going to be successful. The Americans didn't really start any de-radicalization. It was totally on the surface and imposed on the population all kinds of new ideas. And I say, look, we understand, I hope we understand, the dimensions of the hatred. It's coming from national logic and narrative, and it's coming from an Islamic radical Islamic narrative as well. And this is what's being fed to the minds of the people in Gaza day in, day out. We have to start changing it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be an immense task for anybody. But we have to start somewhere, and that's why we need the support of people like the Emiratis and Saudis. We have a different approach, and the Iranian opposition may come too if they want. These are people who have a different approach to Islam and see Islam in a tolerant way, and believe in the ability to join hands with other religions, and understand that we should move towards peace, towards real peace, with real cooperation between the two parties.
General, here in DC, we hear from commentators that Hezbollah is one of the most powerful tools in the proxies of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Is this true? And if so, how Israel could establish an effective deterrence against Hezbollah?
Oh, it's true. Hezbollah has many more capabilities than they used so far. So they used a lot of what they have, but not all that they have. The reason they didn't use it is that Israel has not used it. It has not used all its capabilities too. The entire confrontation with Hezbollah is conducted in the confines of something that I would call ongoing, escalating warfare that is being done in a controlled and moderate manner. Because it reflects the interests of both sides. Israel doesn't want a war in the north right now. It prefers to finish the war in the south before it goes to the north. And Hezbollah doesn't want a war in the north because it's afraid of what Israel can do to it. Israel also is worried about what Hezbollah can do. So it's mutual deterrence here that plays a role. And that's why both sides have decided to handle the conflict in this manner. It's painful for both sides. We have paid the price, mostly by losing some people, especially now those 12 children in Masjid Shams, and on top of that by being forcing ourselves, not forced by Hezbollah, forced ourselves because of our concern about people's life, to be moved to take some evacuate. Any number goes 60 to 80,000 people from the villages along the border to safer places inside Israel. And we therefore pay a heavy price for this ongoing battle. And so does Hezbollah. Hezbollah pays a much higher price when it comes to its the lives of its operators. It lost already close to 400 people and many wounded people. But it believes that this is a price that is worthwhile for being able to show solidarity with Hamas and to show that they are valuable for the Iranian effort to support Hamas. And they believe that this is going to help them in not only solidarity with Hamas, but forcing Israel to spend some of its forces along the northern border vis-a-vis Hezbollah and not inside Gaza. So they tell themselves they are helping Hamas in this manner. And they are happy to do that as long as Israel doesn't use its full force and doesn't act against Lebanese infrastructure and the Lebanese assets, because this is going to be very painful for Hezbollah, because they want to present themselves as the shield of Lebanon, and they don't want to be seen as an explosive shield that brings just damage to Lebanon. But Israel is ready to play along this room and avoids hitting civilian infrastructure in Lebanon. And this is the way we have been doing this until now. And as I said before, the fact that we chose Fuad Shukr as a target after what happened in Masr Shams tells you that Israel is willing to continue along these lines. We shall see what Hezbollah does in response, but that's our lines. I hope that Nasrallah will understand that it's better for him to keep it this way, but you may never know. He's under pain, and he understands that if Fuad Shukr can be reached this way, maybe he's in danger as well. So he has to be very cautious in picking the exact way of action.
One of the fronts that Israel fights, it's the threat from Houthis. They're shooting from the Red Sea. I'm sure United States and allies they're trying to deflect those attacks. But is this even a sustainable solution, just to have a force to deflect attacks, but while they are shooting any way they want and without any kind of a real consequence? Is it even sustainable to keep it this way?
It's sustainable, but it's not good enough. We can do that for a longer time. In the Americans and the Brits and the other forces that participate in the flotilla that is facing the Houthis in the entrance of the Red Sea can stay there for a long time. But is it a good enough solution? No, not at all. We showed what kind of damage can be done to the Houthis if somebody wants to put an end to this harassment. And look, Hezbollah is conducting against us a war of harassment and attrition. Yes, on the wars I mentioned before. The Houthis have done that as the only thing they do is harassment and attrition. They don't mean to do anything more than that, but they cause a damage. The Eilat port is suffering from that, and the Suez Canal is suffering. And something has to be done in order to put an end to this threat. Unfortunately, until now, the international coalition that is dealing with this matter has avoided the option of doing some things that are more visible than what they've done so far. And we do hear about their defensive role and intercepting all kinds of drones and missiles that are on the way to all kinds of targets. And from time to time, we even hear that they take the initiative and hit a base of drones or a base of missiles here and there. But this is not something that would convince the Houthis to put an end to that, because they produce so many and they get so many from Iran. And this is something that they're ready to go on with. Things like what we did 2 weeks ago is much more convincing for the Houthis. They paid a heavy price. This can be done not only by Israel. The idea, the logic of Israel is that dealing with threats from the third tier should be done by the international community, especially by the United States. We find ourselves in a situation where we have to deal with the threats from the third tier as well. We deal with the first tier, with the Palestinians. We deal with the second tier, with Hezbollah and Syria and other places when they emerge. And we thought that the 30 will be dealt with by the international community. But no, when we wanted to retaliate what the Iranians did on April 14th, we were told by the Americans, no, we are not going to participate in anything offensive. The same here in Yemen, after the attack in Tel Aviv, we had to do it ourselves. Yemen is even farther away than Iran. So it's a big burden, but we are strong and we can handle this too. Of course, we would rather have it done by our friends. We do appreciate the friendship, and we do appreciate the military advantages of this friendship. We saw it on April 14th in a very visible way, in a very vivid way. It's the way that the Americans and the Brits and the French and some Arab states contributed to our ability to deal with all these incoming weapons was highly appreciated by Israel. But we understand that all these efforts and support will come when we need to protect ourselves, defend ourselves, but it's not going to come when we need to take offensive measures in order to protect ourselves.
Yeah, that's the strange thing about Houthis is that I'm sure you remember when the Saudi Arabia and UAE and other allies were fighting Houthis. I think they conducted the most severe airstrikes for a long time. And for some reason none of the capabilities of Houthis has been decreased, and they are just getting somehow even stronger with all the with the pressure, with the military attacks, with the sanctions, with the foreign terrorist designation list. Still that doesn't change at all. What's the secret? What we are missing and not seeing in that picture?
Well, Houthis are extremely well trained in fighting in spite of being exposed to extremely high force used against them. And I don't know that we have invested enough effort in studying the ways that they do that throughout the years, because we thought about the Houthis as might become a threat to us, but this is something for the long-term future. It's we didn't consider it to be something that can happen in the short term. I hope that now that we have decided finally to attract some of our attention to the Houthis, we shall find the answer to this question. The problem is that the Houthis have a very, very long border through which they can bring in a lot of stuff from Iran. And they are quite capable in producing some of this stuff, definitely assembling it in their territory. And we have to learn what we learned about the way the Iranians bring weapons to Hezbollah is very impressive. We were able to stop much of these weapons on the way to the hands of Hezbollah when they were crossing through Syria. And yet we didn't manage to foil all the shipments. And this was in our area of responsibility. Houthis were an area of interest, but not an area of responsibility. And we attributed much less efforts to finding the answers to these questions. I hope that now we shall be able to do that and do something about it. We need to do more about what's happening between Iran and Hezbollah even these days. So we have our hands full and we have a very full plate to deal with it. Especially now, we need the help. We need the support and the cooperation of especially the Americans, anybody else that has knowledge about these things. We should, I guess we do, but I don't know of it. It makes sense that we do cooperate with the Saudis that were supposed to learn about this throughout all these years that they were fighting the Houthis. I hope we do, but I'm not sure that we do. And we have to get this information from wherever we can, because otherwise this sustainable but problematic situation is going to last for many, many years. War is going to last for some time.
General, we can speak for hours, and you have been very generous with your time. Allow me to ask my last question, if I may, and it's on October 7th. you mentioned when Israel left Gaza, the talk was if one rocket fires, we will respond. But after that, they said, well, we are out and it's not our responsibility anymore, which means the security issues found other measures for decision making. We talked about 600 kilometers of Hamas tunnels so far, and their capabilities was on the rise. I don't think there's any way that they could have done this in hiding and without knowledge of anyone. How is it that Israel was surprised in this magnitude on October 7th?
No, I think the surprise on October 7th has to do with something different. Yes, we didn't know all the details about the tunnels, and we didn't know the whereabouts of every and each tunnel. And this is, it shouldn't have happened. Should have had better information about it. But the main surprise that we had was that we believe that they are deterred. That's something bigger than just that we didn't know about that or this tunnel. We didn't understand that they are not deterred. We didn't understand they are planning and contemplating to carry out such an attack. So that even when we did have the information about what's going to happen, we were still convinced that it's not going to happen because they are deterred. They don't have the capability. They are focused on improving the living conditions of the people in Gaza. That was our conception about the enemy. And we had another conception that was even worse than that, we know everything we need to know. So if we say that they are deterred, of course they are deterred because we know everything we need to know about them. So we can't go wrong. And this dovetailed the first conception because it made it possible for us to reconsider the first conception. And that's how we ended up with this terrible mistake. On top of that, a lot of many small things, some are not that small, that helped us make this terrible mistake. For example, we didn't invest enough in human resources, in human sources. We didn't invest enough in human sources so that, look, coming to the night of 6th and 7th of October, at least 5,000, 6,000 people in Gaza knew that something is going to happen. None of them was on our pay list. How can that happen? We based our entire efforts on electronic capabilities, and they can fail you. And they did fail us. We didn't have, it's a huge failure. I don't know how we can still look at ourselves in the mirror after such a failure. It's terrible. And we did many other small but big failures, like there's a rule in intelligence that when you face a doubt, you shouldn't have a doubt. Take the worst possible option if you don't know. And the people that night did have all kinds of reasons to be suspicious about what's happening, and they decided let's wait to 8:30 in the morning. Why wait to 8:30? And they decided not to wake up anybody from the upper echelons. The political echelon was not briefed about what's going on. These are terrible mistakes, especially these are terrible mistakes when you don't know what you know. They did have the plan. They didn't know that they have the plan. People that were making decisions didn't know that they have the plan. They know that everything they are seeing it fits a certain plan that is very dangerous and that we know that the Hamas has and works according to. These are things that are terrible. Have to do with the structure of intelligence. But we have to separate here between the intelligence about early warning and the intelligence about understanding the minds of the enemy where we failed miserably and we keep failing. We have many more failures along the way. And the intelligence you get in order to support military operations. And that we have good military intelligence. Not perfect, there are always missing parts. And we know about 400 and not 600 kilometers of tunnels. We still have to add up. And one of the reasons for that is that we were not present there anymore. We used to collect information about Gaza based on our ability to be present wherever we wanted, till 2005. Since 2005, we are not there. Of course, the intelligence quality deteriorated along the way because of not being there and losing some sources and so on, which is natural to happen. I want to emphasize one thing. I'm not sure that I said it before, so you can add it later. The option three is logic is that the pressure put on Hamas will force Hamas to accept a hostage deal that is acceptable for Israel as well. It's not that option three says that the hostage is less important, but it puts the hostage deal as a product of the military pressure that we are going to put over Hamas. I might have said it, I might have not. I don't remember myself, so you can add it later.
Thank you so much for your time, General, and talking to us. I really appreciate it.